Welcome back. We're back. The Pesce Lanzillotta Team Podcast. What is good, everybody? It is, what's today's date?
June
26th. We've been away 2 weeks because the market has come back and has roared back. It is quite interesting what has happened since New York kicked off phase 2. It has been absolutely insane. But before we get to all the real estate stuff, and we give you all the different, stats that come along with that, let's talk about what's gone on in the world. Because the last time we spoke, I think we were talking about lootings, protests, Black Lives Matter, George Floyd, and the madness that was
the pandemic.
The 2 weeks ago. And isn't it funny, by the way, how fast news changes? Like 2 weeks ago, I feel like everyone wanted to kill each other, and the world was at complete odds, and we still are to a degree. But I just think it's funny how we go through such extremes in this country, and it moves quick, right? It's like 1 week you feel like everything's falling apart, and I'm not saying everything's back together now, because it certainly is not, but it just feels like there's fast, violent swings in the attitude of America, literally from week to week. You agree?
Yeah, well, life is a roller coaster. That's for sure.
Yes.
You got to try and stay level-headed. You know, you get caught up with, if you watch the news, you get so caught up in it. And I think during the pandemic, everyone was so caught up in the news because there was nothing to do. Here in New York, the weather was shitty. So you watch the news, and it was just doom and gloom.
Yeah,
24/7. And you got caught up in it. And mentally, it messes with you.
I think it hit America at the worst time, too. Like, everyone, like you said, is hunkered down in their house. They're being tortured, right? Some people, specifically in New York City, are in like a 450 square foot studio apartment for 3 months. That's like being in solitary confinement.
Yep.
Then the news is the only thing they're paying attention to, and it riles them up. It gets them furious and insane, and then you unleash that into a world of, protests and violence, and it turned into anarchy.
Yeah. Well, and now you have, me personally, I stopped watching the news just because, not it wasn't even deliberately, just now that the weather's gotten nice, things are starting to open up.
People are out.
Just getting on with my life.
Yeah.
And it's great. When you don't watch the news, that's why it's like the roller coaster. Now everyone's just getting back to living. And if you don't watch the news, you wouldn't know that, well, if you watch the news, you're still going to think things are fucked, right? And they very well may be. I don't know. But if you don't, and you're just enjoying the weather, and you're getting back to work and enjoying your life, things are good again.
I'll tell you what's really crazy, though, is everything that's come from this George Floyd thing with the police. What a time to be a cop, right? We've got friends who are cops, our friend Frankie. Like, I would not want that job right now.
No.
You can't do anything.
It's an impossible job.
You can't do anything right.
No.
They're saying now, like, police officers, they're outlawing rear naked chokes on people. So as a cop, to apprehend somebody, right? Let's say you're in a physical confrontation with somebody. I have a wrestling background. It's my instinct, if I want to just stop someone from doing what they're doing, to somehow get the fight to the ground, get on their neck, and choke them until they stop. Maybe they fall asleep for a quick second, cuff them, and then they wake up.
Yeah.
And they're stopped, whatever you want to call it. They're apprehended, right? Now they're outlawing that. They're saying you can't do that. So what do? You just hit someone with a nightstick until they stop? Or you just let them go? I think that that whole thing with that guy in Atlanta, where he pulled the taser out of the cops' holster.
He took the cop's taser,
fired it at them, and then apparently he fired it a few more times, but it was already shot, but it still makes a loud noise, a taser, when you do that. So they thought he was actually firing on them, and they shot him. there are people who are advocating for the fact that they should have just let him go. I mean, isn't that not your job as a cop? I mean, it's very confusing, right?
Well, first of all, I disagree, right? But let's just talk about it. Mm-hmm. I mean, if you're in that situation and the guy is volatile enough that the cops have been called, you show up, he's not cooperative.
Yep.
Not only is he not cooperative, he steals your weapon, he fires it at you. I mean, at that point, you're just defending your own life. You don't know. God forbid he hits you with the taser and you go down. Maybe he runs over and starts beating you. Maybe he runs over, steals your gun and shoots you, right? So at that point, you just have to defend yourself because God forbid you get hit with the taser and you go down. You don't know what's going to happen. You could die. So
God forbid.
So you got to be fully within your right to defend yourself.
Not to mention you're dealing with this for a modest income.
You're doing it. If you're a police officer, you're probably doing it because you want to be helpful. You know, for the most part. Are there bad cops? Of course, but there's bad everything. You know, you're probably doing it for the right reasons. You don't get into it for the money, I'm sure.
No.
I mean, here in New York, starting salary for police officers is probably like $35,000, I think. In New York, that's nothing. You're not.
Yeah, and you're doing that to be thrown into situations like that.
And not to mention, you're probably young. I mean,
young
when
20s.
you first start as a cop, you're in your mid-20s, you know. It's not like you have a ton of experience with this situation. But even so the other side of the coin is, let's just say he wasn't listening. He didn't steal the weapon, nothing. The officer's like, sir, please lay on the ground, you know, put your hands up. And he just doesn't listen. At that point, we say, okay, we're supposed to just say, okay, see you later. You walk one way, he walks the other. I mean, because what if the guy robs something
and then how about
or
this?
beats someone? You're going to show up and just say, hey, sir, please lay down. And if the people committing the crimes are going to know, as long as they just don't cooperate, you're going to walk away. There's no repercussion for your actions. There's consequences for your actions.
So it's a very weird thing. So here's the deal. The bottom line is the police are here to keep law and order, right? That's their job, law and order. And when you start taking their ability to enforce their power away from them, you have chaos. New York City recently, they just Anthony Fish, his brother he was on the plainclothes unit in Harlem. And the plainclothes unit, meaning that they're not actively in police uniform, they are the ones who actually uncover the majority of the crime in the city because they don't know if that's a cop. They don't know if that's just a regular, person walking around the street. So they commit a crime, and then the plainclothes cop obviously catches it in the act. Now, they're gone.
So does he have a job still?
No, so what they did was they reassigned them all to a different unit. But now, since they've done that, crime has spiked like crazy. There's people. Did you see that video of the guy walking in Brooklyn? Someone's washing his car. The guy just walks up to him, shoots him in the head, keeps walking.
I didn't see it, no.
Shot someone dead. I saw another video of there was a homeless guy sleeping on the street. Some guy takes like a huge firecracker, like an M80, like I don't even know what a firecracker, like what the specific kind of firecrackers are, but it was like a freaking bomb. The guy lights the firecracker and throws it at the homeless guy and runs away. And I sent it to my buddy. My buddy said, you know who catches people doing things like that? The plainclothes cops. So what's happened is now, because they've taken the plainclothes cops off the street, there's an insane spike in crime.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Because they know where the cops are.
Yeah.
Right?
It's just become, the whole thing has become, there's so much to talk about this, but the whole thing has become political because of the election, right? So I was I was just reading and listening to a few things about all of this, right? So now everyone wants the federal government to pass these laws. The federal government doesn't control what the New York City police do. If they pass a law that there's no chokeholds.
Does.
Yeah, so if the federal government, like the Senate, the House, whatever, if they start passing police reform bills that ban chokeholds, that's banning federal agents from doing it. So you have, like in New York, for instance, because we're in New York, you have a Democratic-run state, Democratic mayor, everything, Cuomo, congressman, everything, governor. It's they could pass this release reform tomorrow. The reason they're not doing it is because it would be looked at as a win for Trump, who's a Republican, and it's in an election year.
Right.
So they're not passing any police reform, even though they can stop the New York City police from doing it.
Isn't it funny how everything is so political?
Well, it shouldn't be. So now you have a civilian, a child, whatever, who's going to suffer until the election in hopes that they win it for any reform, because something bad will happen before the election that could have been prevented had they just passed it.
Oh, and by the way, here's the other thing that gets me. Every weekend, there's like 75 people in South Chicago who are shot and killed, and no one seems to care about that. I don't understand.
Well, it's automatically made, is there racism in the world? Yes, but it's automatically made a race issue. I mean, how does everyone know it was a race issue? Maybe the cop that killed George Floyd was just a dick.
He's a bad cop,
right?
He's just a bad cop.
Could he have been racist? Is there racism? Yes, I'm not saying that, but just because a white cop has a bad confrontation with a black guy doesn't automatically make it racism.
So apparently George Floyd had like a terrible record too, leading up to this, and the cop knew him.
Yeah.
Apparently they sort of knew each other. I don't know if you listen to Candace Owens at all?
I mean, I follow her on Twitter.
So I just discovered her. She's a young African-American woman, but she's extremely conservative, and she's got a totally different view on the whole thing. She makes a lot of sense of it all. But it's just such a touchy subject. And listen, there's good cops, there's bad cops. Just like you said, there's good and bad and everything.
Yeah.
But you can't start taking cops off the street. You can't make that job a job that no one wants, because then nobody is going to want to do it. And you also have to take into consideration that cops have PTSD too, just like a soldier at war. I mean, if you're in a shooting in East New York, Brooklyn, and you're getting shot at while shooting at somebody in broad daylight, you're going to come out of that a different person.
Especially if you're like 20, if you just started, you're 25 years old.
Yeah.
You've never had that experience before.
You know who actually did a great podcast was Jocko Willink. He was on the Joe Rogan podcast, and they talked a lot about this because Jocko is a Navy SEAL, and he explains, what it's like. He says it's the same thing even overseas. Like, there are soldiers overseas who, they want to stay overseas. Like, they like it. They get off on war. And there are people who, after 1 week being at war, want to come home. Now, if you're at war, do you want to be next to the guy, or do you want the guy next to you to be someone who wants to go home, or do you want the guy who wants to be there, can think clearly, can manage a situation? And he talked a lot about training. Like these cops, I mean, I don't know about you, but I've seen some out of shape cops. Like, there should be like a minimum standard, a minimum requirement.
There is, but it's clearly not adequate, I guess.
Well,
it's not continuing.
It's not continuing. Yeah. So you could get on the force, gain 50 pounds, and become a slob, and not be able to do your job correctly. You know what I mean? But there should be like we have continuing education in the real estate world, right? We have to take, a certain amount of hours and credits every few years. Maybe they should be doing something every 6 months. There should be some kind of training so they understand that you can only hold a rear naked choke for a certain amount of time. Maybe they learn Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Maybe they learn hand-to-hand combat continually. That, according to as far as I understand, I think it's only like a 3-month police academy, and that's it. You're a cop. There's no additional training to that.
Yeah. Well,
there should be.
Police reform would definitely be a good thing in the sense, like you said, that there's continued training, there's continued standards that you have to hit and live up to, right? That would all be good. But you could still do that and still empower the police and have them do their job and foster a good relationship between police and the civilian community.
And that's what needs to happen. I totally agree. Totally agree. So that's what happened there with all that. Corona. We have not talked about Corona. What is going on with this coronavirus?
Does anyone care anymore? I'm over it. Everyone's over it.
I'm over it too. I mean, quite frankly, I couldn't care less. But what's happening is interesting. Florida, Texas, and Arizona are seeing significant resurgences of the virus. I have friends in Southern Florida who work in the hospitals, and they're filling up with corona patients. So they're seeing much higher admissions as a result of corona. I wonder what happens from here, because that guy DeSantis, who's the governor of Florida, it's funny how we know all the governors now, right? By the way, I never knew a governor before this, never paid any attention. But that guy DeSantis, he was very cavalier about it. So is he going to have egg on his face now? You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, that's the thing with the data is you can pick and choose the data you want to paint whatever picture, and I don't know what the real story is, but yeah, so maybe testing has just increased, and that's why cases have gone up. Hospitalizations maybe up, but ultimately, I mean, in my mind, is fatality or deaths up, right?
Yeah.
Because if that's staying down, well then, I mean, if people aren't dying, if they're getting sick and recovering, then not to make light of it, but who really cares?
I think we're at, as far as a national death toll, about 120,000.
Yeah. So all right. So but what I'm saying is, out of every 1,000 people that catch it, if initially 50 were dying and now one is dying, while that one is still tragic, I mean, at that point, you're not gonna shut everything down to save one out of 1,000 people that catch it. You know what I mean? It's just the reality. It might sound dark, but it's just the reality of the situation.
I don't think they'll go. I don't think we can afford to go backwards.
No one's gonna go. No one's gonna tolerate it. I don't think they will. I hope people will.
I won't. I can't do. I don't want to do that again, ever again. I don't want to sit home for a few months and do nothing. It was a terrible experience. It's very sad to see a lot of these mom and pops, not doing well now. Even I still think we haven't seen the full effect of this. I think a lot of people, I think we've got a long way to go. I mean, think about it. There's still people who are not comfortable going out to eat, doing things like that. I mean, we're seeing a lot of outdoor seating, right?
Yes.
You went out to dinner.
Yeah,
right?
Twice. No. Well, definitely once, maybe twice. I don't remember.
So what was that like? Were all the seats full? Was he doing a ton of business?
The entire outdoor area was packed. I mean, it's not as busy as the restaurant because there's just not as much space because they're basically taking up sidewalks or parking lots, whatever extra little space they have. And then the tables are separated, so, but every table was full.
Yeah. But they're definitely not if, like, for instance, Pulcinella. If Pulcinella is normally at 100% capacity, maybe he was at 60.
No, less than that. I mean, the outdoor area is probably like 20% of what the indoor area can fit.
Was there a wait? Were there people waiting?
You have to make a reservation.
Oh, you have to make a reservation.
But indoor dining's open now. Phase 3.
Oh, it is.
New York Phase 3 started. Long Island Phase 3 started, and indoor dining was part of that. I don't know. I don't even know. Again, I'm over Corona, so I don't even know exactly what Phase 3 included. But yeah, you could dine indoors now.
You can?
Yes. Yep.
Do you have to wear a mask? What's that all about?
I didn't know that.
I
don't know. I don't know what the rules are. I honestly don't know. Phase 3 started, yeah.
There's definitely some kind of social distancing, right?
I'm sure there's still rules. I don't know what they are. We could look it up real quick.
I mean, you have to think that they're trying to keep people away from each other. They probably have to wear a mask. I'd probably rather be outdoors. How do you eat and
wear a mask? Like, what's the point, though, of wearing a mask? If you're going to take it off every time, you got to take a bite of food or take a sip of a drink.
I'd probably rather be outdoors than indoors.
Well, it's nice out, too, so that's the other thing. So most people are probably still opting for the I called one restaurant because it's my wife's birthday this weekend. I'm actually going to dinner tonight.
Happy birthday to Sam.
Yes, thank you. And the restaurant was taking reservations for outdoor dining, but no reservations for indoor dining. So I don't know if that's like a rule and it's just first come, first serve, or that's just the way they're doing it. Let me see. Phase 3 explained.
Is this New York Phase 3?
This is just New York in general. It's not Long Island because I think parts of upstate already hit Phase 3 before us. Phase 3.
Supposedly outdoors, it's like got a very low chance of spreading.
Well, we will be able to eat inside a restaurant. It won't be back to normal. The state's health and safety guidelines will still be in place, such as reducing the indoor capacity to no more than 50%, keeping tables and people separated by 6 feet, and requiring everyone wear face masks at all times, regardless of distance. So while we can go out to eat, the wait may be longer. So it's so stupid though. So every time you take a sip of a drink or eat some food, you have to take your face mask down, which then
That,
defeats
the purpose of going
yeah,
out.
why even put it on in the first place?
See, I would just go. I would rather sit outside. That would be my. I would opt for sitting outside. That would be my thing.
Well, I wonder if anyone's going to even utilize the inside.
I didn't even
seating.
know we were in phase 3. That's how much I've been paying attention.
Care.
Yeah, I know. But I did read that Cuomo is going to malls, gyms, and movie theaters not opening until phase 4. I think we're gonna have a problem with schools in September.
I don't think so. My kids are going to camp. Camp's open. They're going to be going to camp.
Outdoor camp?
Yeah, outdoor.
That's different than school indoors, though.
I don't see how you could stop the schools though, because if parents are working, you have to be able to send kids to school.
Well, if he's not allowing, here's the problem. He's looking at what's happening in Florida and Texas.
But like I said, are more people just getting sick? Because
I don't know.
Say there's a cold outbreak in Florida.
I know.
And everyone's getting the cold and going to the hospital because they have the cold. But no one's dying. Well, who really gives a shit? You know what I mean? Like, all right, everyone's got the cold.
Look, whatever it is, it's significant enough that Texas halted their reopening process.
Yeah.
So they stopped.
But again, everything is politicized, and you have to. So are they doing it because it's dangerous? They're doing it because if they don't, the news is just going to attack
Texas
them.
is a red state, and they stopped.
Yeah, but you have cities like Austin, which is very liberal.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I don't know like the how the politics are changing or if they are. But again, it's what I'm saying. You don't know. You never get the full picture and all the information.
I know, because
you get the little headline the news gives you.
Yeah, we're not feet on the street.
Yeah.
I hear you.
They're also, though, Cuomo's banning, there's travel bans. Like if you come from Florida to New York,
you have to quarantine.
You have to quarantine 14 days. And I heard if you end up if you don't and you get sick and go to the hospital, you get fines like as much as $2,000.
So what's that going to do to airlines? I mean, think about it. You can't go international. You can't really go domestic.
Well, a lot of people would fly for conferences or vacations. So there's no conferences anymore. Like we actually were supposed to be in Nashville for a concert this weekend, me and Sam. I booked a country concert in Nashville.
You didn't go.
I mean, the concert's canceled, so we're not going. So that industry's already decimated. Now
even more so, though. I mean, if you can't even go from Florida to New York without having to quarantine for 14 days.
But they can't really enforce that. Like no one's tracking you.
But you just said they fine you.
If you go to the hospital. So you know what's going to happen? People are going to get sick, and they're not going to go to the hospital. That's exactly what's going to happen.
Out of fear that they're going to get fined.
I'm paying a $2,000 fine.
That's nuts.
Right? Unless they get so sick that they're fearing for their life.
Yeah. I don't know. Imagine you're afraid of a fine. You don't go to the hospital. That's pretty fucking stupid. But that's the world. This is the world we're in now. It's like retarded. It's unbelievable. But the malls, gyms, and movie theaters things is sad to me because, I mean, all these retailers they're hurting. They've got to be hurting. Then these gyms. I have a friend who just opened up a $7 million. He in his company had a $7 million build out of a gym, right here in East Northport. Mm-hmm. It was open for all of 45 to 60 days, and I think 24-hour Fitness, don't quote me on this, but I heard they filed for bankruptcy. And supposedly Lifetime Fitness is trying to buy out, apparently, because I think they have a better financial standing, but Lifetime Fitness is trying to buy stuff out. Maybe the days of going to the gym are just over. Maybe that's just something of the past.
We'll see by the winter what happens. Right now it's nice out again. So it's everyone's outside. They're exercising outside.
My thing, though, is this. If you're not going to let people go to malls, gyms,
what about all
movies,
the stores inside the malls?
Right. That's what I'm saying. The person who owns the mall is screwed. All of the tenants in the mall are screwed. What if that was your livelihood?
I heard a story 2 nights ago. There's a couple. They worked professionally, corporate jobs or whatever, did well, and they just recently quit. And they put their entire life savings into opening a restaurant that they were passionate about, or they're going to cook and all that. And they did that, obviously, right before Corona. And It's just crazy.
See, that's the stuff that breaks my heart. That breaks my heart because corporate America sucks, and I know what they were probably feeling and why they made a decision like that. And now, because of this stupid fucking virus, that dream is really on the fritz.
And I would even say because of the virus. It's because the freedom should have never been taken away. The government could have just listen, here's the information on the virus. Here are the dangers. You're aware. Be smart. And if people want to if those people want to choose to open their restaurant, that's their choice. If people want to choose to go to it, that's their choice. They're all adults. They're fully aware. That's it. In my mind.
Yeah.
I mean, you just took away just the option. They don't, they're just.
My thing though is this: if they're not going to allow us if they're not going to allow malls, gyms, and movie theaters to reopen, if you were to ask me what the biggest petri dish of how a virus like this could spread, it's in the schools. I never got sick until I had kids. Never. My kids started going to school. They started getting sick, and they brought home.
Yeah.
And I would, next thing you know, I had a cold, and I was never sick. So I think that that's going to be a bit of a point of contention for the powers that be and letting the world get back to quote unquote normal. I think that's going to be a big part of it.
Yeah. Well,
that would be very. It would be very sad.
I get it, but you know where I stand.
I hear where you stand, and I agree with how you feel.
My kids are going nuts.
Oh yeah.
And they're at such a young age where you wonder, does it have some type of impact? It's only 3 to 6 months, whatever. But like, they're bored
to tears.
They're bored a lot of the time.
My wife's been
bringing them to do.
My wife's been bringing them to the beach. Beaches are packed though. It's so nice. But
yeah, but even that, I don't know. I just feel bad for them.
I do too. I mean, all kinds of things are getting canceled. New York City Marathon canceled. There's the McDonald's in Times Square shutting down.
Which is crazy. So the New York City Marathon is basically a bunch of people running in the street.
Healthy people.
So now you can have
healthy
you can have protesters. There's probably just as many people protesting in New York City, and they're in these tight crowds. They could do that, but you can't have people run through the streets for the marathon. It's the hypocrisy is just fucking out of control.
Yeah,
it's out of control.
I didn't even think about that.
What's the difference between the New York City Marathon and the protests going on in New York City?
Nothing.
There's nothing in terms of like the number of
there
people.
Might be more people. I don't even know how many people marched though. The marches were days and days and days and days of people getting together. It had to.
And they're close together. In the marathon, maybe initially everyone's close, but then they get spread out.
Yeah, I mean, I've never run a marathon. Clearly not built for that, but I hear you.
Yeah,
I hear you there. It's gonna. You know what?
That's gotta be a way you could do it. Stagger the start times or something.
Yeah. I mean, let's talk. So let's talk about this event we've got coming up at Clock Tower. This is kind of interesting. The Ferrari Roma. Have you ever driven a Ferrari?
No,
I have. Very nice car. I don't know what kind of Ferrari I drove, but I drove a Ferrari. We're doing an event, which is gonna be pretty cool. It's gonna be $1 million listing style at a listing that we have over at 35 Clock Tower Lane in Old Westbury, $8 million house. The builder spared no expense. Ferrari is going to be unveiling the new Ferrari Roma at that event. It's going to be a lot of fun. Throwing things like this it's more difficult than you think it is in a residential neighborhood, right?
Yes. Well, throwing things like this in general, it's that you have to plan and coordinate. There's so many details that go into it that you don't realize or go into it.
Yeah. So you've got to be a party planner.
Yes. Yeah.
It's going to be cool.
Yeah. Luckily we have help.
Are you into cars or no? Is that your thing?
No.
Cars like that?
No.
Never?
I mean, they're cool.
Yeah.
I like them. Like I would drive one, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I've driven a car guy.
So I've driven a Maserati. An R8, the Audi R8, some Ferrari. I don't know. It was like a $500,000 Ferrari. and I've driven a Lambo. I don't even fit in a Lambo.
And what was it? I mean, was it like, did you get out and was like, that was awesome? Or you're like, all right,
So
that was cool.
here's the deal. I would never want to own one and drive it every day. The Maserati honestly felt like, I mean, maybe I'm crazy, but the Maserati that I was in, that I was driving, it felt no better than like a BMW. Honestly. The Ferrari was incredible. The Lambo was too small, way too small for me. I couldn't even fit. I had to like literally stand in the car to drive it. And the R8 was cool. That thing was fast.
Yeah.
That thing was quick. You hit the gas on that thing, the pedals just go. I still want to drive a Tesla. I've driven in a Tesla. I've never driven a Tesla.
Yeah, that I would like. I'd be into that.
Yeah, that would definitely be something.
If you gave me the option of what to drive first, I'd probably choose a Tesla over those other cars.
I'm also hearing there's a new company that is coming to market that is creating a luxury level electric car.
There's a lot of companies, small companies out there creating electric cars. Rivian is one, which Ford and Amazon partnered, and that's specifically like SUV and pickups. There's another one called Bollinger, which is like almost like a Jeep and Hummer type electric car. I know those two because I personally want an electric car, and I like SUVs and trucks, and that's what they do. But there's a ton of them.
Do you think that Tesla is so far ahead of the ball and ahead of the game?
Yes.
That these other people just can't catch up?
Yeah, listen, it's a big market space, so you'll have, there'll be other people selling cars in the marketplace.
Right.
But yeah, I think Tesla's so far ahead. And I think Elon Musk is just so far ahead. I mean, that guy is just so smart. I don't think any other company, because of Elon, is going to have the brain power to compete with them.
Yeah, I hear that. I
mean, the guy's building literally rocket ships and spaceships that land themselves back on Earth.
How do you compete with that?
And so I mean, for him, a car is probably like drawing a stick figure.
I can't get over him. I mean, he's got a bunch of kids.
Does he have a bunch?
I think he's got like 6 kids.
I thought he just had his first.
Kids. No, definitely not.
Oh, okay.
Definitely not. He has the Boring Company. He has SpaceX. He's got Tesla. He's creating solar roofs for houses and battery packs.
Yep.
I mean, what else does he have in his hands? Oh, the Neuralink is another one. I mean, how does one? I mean, we're busy as shit running a real estate team. How does he manage and carry all of that? It's nuts.
He's a lot smarter. He probably sleeps a lot less, but he also builds companies around it. So he's got people. He's got the right people helping out.
I guess that's really what it comes down to. Is he's the director of the people. That's the only way that you can do it. And he made his bones with PayPal, right? That's how he made his money.
Yes.
Initial money.
I don't know if he was involved with that. I don't know if that was his initial thing or something else. But yeah, that was definitely earlier on in his career.
Interesting. So let me ask you this. What do you think about this culture where people have said things 10 years ago and it comes to bite them in the ass today? How do you feel about that? So for instance, I'll give you an example. I think like in 2005, this is the first one I ever heard of. This was a while ago. Kevin Hart, the comedian. Have you ever seen his documentary, by the way?
No.
Great documentary on Netflix. What Kevin Hart does with this documentary is he let cameras follow him around, and Kevin he's obviously one of the biggest comedians in the world. He makes all this money doing stadiums and stuff like that. But he lets the camera follow him around. It shows you like his day to day, and he's got like a team of buddies around him. I think they call each other like the Solo Cup Boys or the White Cup Boys or something like that. I think something Cup Boys, but it's like him and 5 of his buddies. One of them's his trainer, and it's a collaboration of like people who have surrounded him in his growth to the top that he met along the way. Right, some are comedians from early on in his career back in Philadelphia and New York City. and others are just people that he just knew forever. So it follows him around. But one of the things that it brings up in the documentary is this thing that he said. He said something jokingly about gay people or something like that. And it was literally like 15 years prior to when he was nominated to be the host of like the Grammys or something like that, or the Oscars or some like major Hollywood, award show, and he was supposed to host it. And the second that he got announced as the host, this started to come up from 15 years ago. And he apologized for it and anything, but it continued to haunt him. Now, recently, Joe Rogan is in the news, right, for his $100 million Spotify deal, which is supposedly light, supposedly more money than that. And he was laughing. It had something to do with him and Joey Diaz laughing about taking advantage of, because Joey Diaz is, you know who Joey Diaz is? The guy is hysterical, and he's one of the most dirty comedians ever. But he's the guy will have you like crying, laughing. And again, they did the same thing to him. They went back to like 2010, where they were jokingly talking about like some subject where Joey Diaz, had a girl perform oral sex on him so she could get on stage and do a comedy set at like a comedy club like that, right? And they made light of it and laughed about it, but it came back, and now, it's biting them in the ass. But what do you think about like this in general? Like people looking deep into other people's pasts, and
it's ridiculous because everyone's got a past. Everyone's got a past, and values change, times change. It's just ridiculous. I mean, listen, if you murdered someone 15 years ago, then you probably shouldn't be president of the United States, 20 years later after doing your time, right? Like that's a valid one. But all this little, like to go back and find any little thing, especially a guy like Joe Rogan, who's publicly, who's been out in the public for so long, you're bound to find something. It's ridiculous. The whole cancel culture is ridiculous. You're erasing history, which history is not supposed to be funny or nice or good or bad. It's just, it is what it is, and it doesn't need to be erased. If you don't agree with it, that's fine. It's not all history is good. There's a lot of history that's bad. Yeah. But you can't just erase it, pretend it's not there. What's the saying? If you don't remember history, you're doomed to repeat it or something like that. Yeah.
Well, that's why they write history and history books. Yeah. I just think it's sad. I mean, don't we have anything better to talk about?
The news has nothing better to talk about. That's the thing.
And who's doing this research? Who's going back 10 years?
People without jobs.
I mean, where were you 10 years ago? Think how different your life was 10 years ago than it was today.
Especially kids now. So kids, like we were in college when Facebook was just becoming a thing. So
and it was only college students. Remember that?
Exactly. So now you have kids that are growing up on it though. So now you're going to have literally people that when they're 50, they had social media and their life is being recorded at 13.
Yeah.
So you're going to go back and people that are 13, 15, 20, 25, you're going to hold them accountable for their actions when they were kids.
I know.
It's crazy. They're just kids. Again, there's a point, like I said, if you murder someone, all right, that's different. But
see, I come from the place that like we live in an unforgiving world. I mean, I don't know about these people who dig these things up about people and then cancel him.
They're probably perfect. They probably have a perfect history.
Well, that's a very good point. But the point is, I mean, I don't know. Since I've left school and entered into the real world, I think the biggest slap in the face for me was that like you're not the most important thing in the world. You're not special. You were born into a certain circumstance, and you got to figure out a way to build on that and get better every day. And you got to work your ass off, and hard work plus dedication to whatever it is you're trying to do to make your life better will get it that way. I mean, and people also aren't nice. Like I've had many bosses who are not nice. In fact, I've had people that were in charge of me that were complete assholes. So like, what are we raising here? You know what I mean? Like, are we raising a a generation of people who are just soft? And is that good? I mean, do you think to a certain level, because I feel this way, I think to a certain level, I think we should be a compassionate, loving society. But if you go too far in that direction and everyone gets to the point where they start expecting the world to be nice, I think that's a problem because it's not nice.
Well, it's not realistic to make it nice no matter what you do. You can't.
That's why I don't even
Life
understand why
is
these
not
things.
fair.
Like, why are we making light of these things? Is it just because it attracts attention and we can make money off of clicks? Because, I mean, a young person who's paying attention to the news and doesn't know any better probably thinks a lot of these gripes are justified, but they've also got a very false perception of what the world really is.
They're getting brainwashed and probably in some cases radicalized.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know about you. Correct me if I'm wrong here, but the world isn't nice. You get that first job, you know, I'll never forget. I worked in a restaurant. It was a pain in the ass. My boss there was awesome, but the people that own the restaurant, I remember being a kid and being spoken to in like a way that I was like, holy shit, these guys are fucking maniacs. You know, like, but you grow a thicker skin, you get better every day, and you learn how to deal with people like that. You can't like sound the alarm every time someone's mean to you or says something that's a little out of line. And I think that's sort of like where we're headed as a country.
You're not going to get there, right? Because the government or the news or whatever power there is, you can't make the whole world nice. You can't make the whole world so it doesn't offend anyone. It just doesn't work. So if that's the mission we're on, great. It's a great mission.
Yeah.
But, you know, to just force it down people's throats is not realistic.
I know. It's just weird. It's a very weird situation. It's just not how I grew up at all. Period. I mean, I went from sports at a very high level to working in restaurants through college to sales. And in every scenario, it just got harder and harder and harder, honestly.
I think it's just a natural cycle of things. You go through, you know, like our grandparents' generation go through World War II, and life is tough, and, you know, this is a certain way of life, and then you build it up so that life could be easier for your family, and life gets easier, and then people become more unappreciative or start to focus on petty bullshit.
It's almost like the country.
This happens.
It's almost like the country is spoiled. There's a bunch of spoiled brats running around.
Well, I think Americans in general are spoiled compared to
other countries.
Yeah, compared there's I mean, America's not a third world country, and there's definitely people in America who are not have terrible living conditions, right? Or suffer from whatever terrible evil there is. So not to just ignore that, but yeah, I mean, you're born in America.
Yeah,
you know,
I know.
You're not born,
if you're
not born in like a mud pit somewhere or something, you know, and just people.
If you're black, white, brown, red, orange, whatever color you are, if you were born here, I mean, I don't know what the odds are to be born in America as an American, but you already right off the bat hit the jackpot.
360 million divided by how many? It's what, 7 billion people in the world?
Yeah, I mean, those are your odds, right?
And then, I mean, you don't even realize how grateful you should be, just even if you hate America, just that you have the right to protest and actually voice that opinion. Go live in China and try saying you hate China. Yeah. Go try pulling these protests off.
China's
You'll get shot with a rubber bullet. You'll be arrested.
There's a lot of people in the press in China who get shot.
Yeah.
They get hunted if they print articles that say the wrong thing about the Chinese government.
That's the irony. You
hate
America
down and shot
so much. I mean, the reason you can even have that opinion and express that opinion in the way that you do is because you're
American.
Yeah, that's a privilege.
It's like such a juxtaposition, right? Like it's like you're born into this country that gives you all these freedoms, and then like you bitch about it and you complain about it.
And you have the freedom to do that.
it's just crazy though, right? Isn't that like a certain level of crazy? You have I mean, you should have the freedom to protest, yes, and have a voice, but it's the people who complain about their freedoms, and I don't know. I just feel like maybe I'm more appreciative of what we have here. I don't know.
Should be. Gratitude.
Yeah. So let's get into real estate. Let's talk about real estate. Mm-hmm. What's happening in real estate? Let's talk about the past few weeks since we entered phase 2. So since we've entered phase 2, Mike and I and our team have been running around like chickens with their heads cut off, signing people up on listings, having conversations with people. Everybody on Long Island is hearing the same thing, and they're seeing the same thing, which is there's a few things happening here. Number one, the New York City buyer has entered Long Island and is looking to scoop up property to get out of the city. So, the whole de-urbanization thing that we were talking about on our last podcast is true. There's a lot of people that don't want to live on top of each other anymore. They don't want to get in an elevator and hit a button in an elevator that everyone else hit that day. They don't want to be out and about. And honestly, with everything that's going on in New York City, with it being shut down, the whole appeal of living in Manhattan ultimately is to experience the restaurants that are there, to go to the shows that are there, right? It's a very active city, and people want to be out and about doing their thing, right? That's kind of I would say that's the whole appeal to Manhattan.
Instead, most people are stuck in their 1,000 square foot
right.
apartment.
So now a lot of people are saying to themselves, and we have many, many, many friends who have leases that are not renewing their leases. They're coming to Long Island. They're coming to Long Island in droves, too. I mean, we have listings that have been on the market for 9 to 12 months, and suddenly they're selling off, and they're selling off at generous numbers. They're selling off at generous numbers to people who have come out from the city and are buying these properties all cash. So our prediction on the last podcast seems to be coming true. These houses are selling. They're selling very fast. They're selling to this new New York City buyer who have deep pockets. And it has never been a better time, in my opinion, to be on the market, especially if you were someone who had their house on the market previously and for whatever reason you had difficulty selling. I sincerely think that you have your best shot now. Now, the other part of this whole thing is the supply. So the last 3 months, and we reported this on our podcasts and our market updates throughout the pandemic, but listing inventory, new listings to market were down like 70 to 80%. So for 3 straight months, new listing inventory was down 70 to 80%. And this month, when everything reopened, we sort of expected that there should be like a 3x, maybe 4x as many listings coming to market than maybe June 2019, the same period of time. What's happened is new listings are up, but they're not 4x, they're not 3x, they're not 2x. They're up a few hundred listings. And this has created a situation where we've got a new buyer in town and a lot of existing buyers that were already here from before the pandemic. And now we've got, precipitously low levels of inventory, maybe the lowest levels of inventory ever, and a lot of sellers who still intend to get their house on the market that are afraid to get their house on the market, and it's created the perfect storm to be selling a property. And houses are going at crazy numbers, right? even Clock Tower. Clock Tower is an $8 million listing. We've had it for about a month and a half at this point.
Something like that.
Something like that. We've probably shown it 15 times. On an $8 million listing before the pandemic, you're probably lucky to show it 4 times in 6 months, right? So, I mean, what are your thoughts on this, Mike? Where is this headed? What does the future look like? And if you were a seller right now and a buyer, how would you be approaching this market?
Well, I think it sounds counterintuitive, but I think it's a great time to sell and a great time to buy. And my reasoning is this. So usually if you're selling or buying, unless on Long Island, it's usually because of, and we've spoke about this in the past, some type of life event. You're starting a family, you're getting married, you're retired, all your kids moved out. There's something going on where you need a different living situation. It's not an investment property. It's not a second home for the most part on Long Island. So if you need to sell because you need a bigger house or all your kids have moved out, you don't need as much space, whatever the situation is, it's definitely a great time to sell because just the two simple factors. One, like you mentioned, there's not a lot of inventory on the market, simple supply and demand. That limited amount of inventory is going to get you a premium for your home. And also mortgage rates are at all-time lows, so buyers can put more towards the principal and they have to pay less interest. That's also going to help with your sales price. And then depending on all price ranges, but even the luxury price range, like 1 million and up, 1.5 million and up, there are a lot of New York City buyers coming to town, which is helping. So if you need to sell, it's a great time to sell. It makes sense. On the other hand, from a buying perspective, it's also a great time to buy, to the point that I made before. Mortgage rates are at all-time lows. You're locking in a 30-year rate at like 3%, which is insane.
And the Fed announced that they have absolutely no intention of raising those rates for the distant future. So
exactly. So the other thing is it's making it a good time to buy is that, and I can't tell the future, in my opinion, barring some complete economic meltdown, which I guess is possible. If you buy now, I think, real estate over time historically has always appreciated, but I think it's going to continue to appreciate over the short term, meaning like 5 to 10 years, because the Fed has announced they're going to keep rates low for at least the next couple of years. So that's going to help. Also, to your point, inventory is not increasing 3x, 4x, so we're going to have still a limited supply of inventory available, helping prices. And also the Fed has just printed so much money that there's more currency in circulation that's going to cause an increase in asset prices as well. So if you need to buy, it's a great time to buy because I think the piece of real estate you bought is going to continue to appreciate. On the other hand, when you're selling, you could say, yeah, well, I'm just going to hold it and it's going to continue to appreciate. Yes, but if you're at a point in your life where it makes sense to sell, does maintaining that carrying cost make sense? Also, if you're older, which a lot of people selling are older because they just want a downside, your house is probably outdated. And in that case, it's unless you're updating it, a buyer is going to even if you wait 2 years, the house is just even more older at that point now. And construction costs and material costs are also appreciating in value. So it just becomes, while you think the house down the block that's kind of updated sold for $1 million, so mine's for $1 million. Someone's just looking at your house as, well, no, I got to put $200,000 into that thing.
Right.
So they're only going to pay $800. So I think does it make sense what I'm saying? I think it's a good time. If you need to make a real estate transaction, it's a good time to do so. There's no negative to it. I would say the only scenario where it doesn't make sense to sell would be as if you have an updated house and you don't mind waiting another 2 years. Because I think in 2 years, likely, it is going to be worth more.
Right.
But if you don't have an updated house or you want to sell now and there's really no benefit to waiting 2 years because the carrying costs really your house is the only thing holding you from retirement, which is like the case of one of our clients, then just sell. There's no point in waiting. From a purchase perspective, I can't see a negative. I can't see a reason not to purchase now. The only reason would be is if you can't find the house you want because of the limited inventory. But that's just a matter of the right house will pop up. It always does. Just keep your eye on the market or get with an agent who's going to keep their eye on the market. And when the right house pops up, if it's the right house, there is no downside in my mind to locking in a 3%, a 3% 30-year mortgage. on an asset that's going to appreciate in value.
Yep. I couldn't agree with you more. I think it's actually a great time to get into the flipping business.
Yes, let's keep that between us.
Yes. But listen, you buy something today, the Fed is keeping interest rates low. They're at 3% on a 30-year mortgage. It is free money. Okay, free money. And a jumbo loan, it's probably in the high twos, maybe mid twos. And they're leaving it like that for a while. I would say, at least until we get a vaccine for coronavirus, you're going to see low inventory, which is at least 12 months out.
Yeah, inventory is not just going to. It's been proven. It's not just going to increase exponentially. It's something that's going to happen slowly over time.
Yes. And by the way, before we even entered this whole thing, we had an inventory crisis throughout the entire country.
There was already
There's not enough housing for the people that need it. So, yeah, man. I mean, if I'm going to do anything with my money, it's probably going to be I'm going to end up buying more houses, turning around, flipping them, holding them, renting them, because the stock market still doesn't make any sense to me, but it is what it is. So let's go over some numbers here to substantiate what we were talking about. So new listings in 2020. This is from June 1st until today, which is the 26th. Which is the 26th. We have 3,631 new listings. In 2019, there was 3,006. So when we were talking earlier about that number being 3x or 4x, or what we expected, it's really not. We've only got 600 extra listings. Now, houses that have gone under contract in 2020, 2,317 versus 2019, which was 2,264. Those numbers are very, very similar. So the absorption rate of these homes is about the same. I would like to know, we should have done that. We should have did this before we jumped on here, but we should have figured out if the average price is going up month to month.
Well, as of our last podcast, like 3 weeks ago, it was.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so, I mean, like 1.5%, and that was across Nassau and Suffolk County combined, all price points.
Yeah.
So obviously, depending on the price point you look at, it'll tell a little bit of a different story depending on the specific neighborhood. But in general, on Long Island, they were up.
So look at this. So closed, and again, closings are a lagging indicator, right? If you look at the closed transactions in 2020, it's 1,199 closings since June 1st, and in 2019, 1,962. So the reason that the 2019 number is higher than the 2020 number is because it's a lagging indicator, and those are properties that went under contract while we were in quarantine. That's it, though. That's all I got for you. Any listings you want to talk about?
No, that's it.
All right, cool. All right, guys, thanks for listening to the podcast. If you want to get in touch with us, buy, sell, or rent some real estate here on Long Island, give us a call. Our number is 516-888-9711. Our email is info@pl-team.com. And our website is www.pl-team.com. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you next time.